Coming up next on The Health Hustle.
In life, I go through birth, deaths, and resurrections, meaning like I have to learn through experience. And then after like the resurrection of like my 2 health journeys, for example, are a great example of that. Or like what I've learned in business, like the hard way, I have to go through the hard things in order for me to then create something new and better. And that's just like how my wiring is and like how the universe just sets up my path for me. And one of my best strategies is to respond in life versus like initiating and making things just happen. I've always been frustrated whenever I'm trying to force things to happen and they're not happening, but it's not in my design. Whereas if I would like respond, when I let things come to me and then decide to move forward with it or not, and opportunities, things work out a lot easier.
Hey folks, and welcome to the Health Hustle of Austin, Texas. On this show, we uncover the big ideas from your fellow health and fitness entrepreneurs in the Austin, Texas area about how they built their business and the lessons they learned along the way. What's up, y'all? Corey here, and on this episode, I had a chance to sit down with Dr. Lauryn Lax. Lauryn is a former TV news journalist turned functional medicine and gut-brain expert with over 25 years of clinical and personal experience. She's overcame 12 uncurable illnesses and is now on a mission to help people disrupt old paradigms in the health industry. Her personal story has been featured on ABC, Good Morning America, TEDx, CBS, US Today, and now officially on the Health Hustle podcast. Some of the things that we get into are why she has never worked for anyone else but herself. She's basically a serial entrepreneur. The moment that changed her life. What she means by gut hungers, the gut-brain connection, the insane amount of content that she's created. She's written multiple books, which is insane to me. One of her most expensive mistakes, learning things the hard way, which I can totally resonate with, her biggest differentiator, how she's been able to figure out how to work less but also achieve more, and so much more. One last thing, if you're a health or fitness professional and you're having difficulties getting leads, I have a free 7-step process that walks you through how to convert your social media following into paying clients. You can find the link in the description of this episode. Without further ado, let's go. Lauryn Lax, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm so well, so excited to be here.
Yeah, I dug pretty deep into everything you've done from prior days up until now, so I'm excited to dig into all of it. So
you're going to unpack it.
Let's do it. So the good place to start for this show for most people is just like the beginning of your quote-unquote entrepreneurship journey. Do you remember the first moment that you were even awoken to the idea that you could start your own business?
I mean, I was a serial entrepreneur from the time I was like 4 or 5 years old, selling my Happy Meal toys as like in a garage sale on my street or whatever. Outside, I set up shop on that. Obviously had lemonade stands growing up. Girl Scouts. I just really wanted to win the dolphin necklace that I could by selling the most cookies, etc. So it began early for me of just like wanting to make my own money and have my own business. I also was a serial babysitter or an entrepreneurial babysitter. Had my own babysitters club, party of one.
Nice.
And I loved those books, by the way. Babysitters Club. You probably didn't read those.
No.
Yeah, but there was like 7 girls, and I was like all 7 of them basically in one business.
Damn.
Yeah.
Where does a lot of that stem from, do you feel like? Because I don't know that a lot of people have that passion, I guess, to just like want to do their own thing and make their own money.
Yeah, I mean, seeing my dad, he had his own law firm, so he is very entrepreneurial and then had multiple businesses. Honestly, I think it is innate, though, in the entrepreneur, too.
Yeah.
I didn't like being told what to do, maybe, too.
Yeah. I can definitely resonate with that. I would argue that I'm pretty disagreeable in a lot of ways, which is definitely the reason, like, when I was in the more corporate world, that I for sure got in trouble more often than not because I would just kind of do my own thing and I didn't necessarily play by the rules.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I never played by the rules. My like claim to fame is I've never worked a full-time job for anyone else in my life. And just always like even in post-college years and then grad school years, piecemealed all sorts of PRN, part-time type of work, freelance work. So I never would have to work for one.
Damn. And is that just because like you just rebel against wanting to work for other people? Like, what is it?
I love my own schedule and my autonomy. Yeah, not being necessarily tied down or being told what to do.
I'd admit autonomy becomes very addicting.
I mean, even there's that inner rebel I think we all have in some capacity, like values levels we'll go through. It's called values level 3 of being a human. We go through 8 total in our lives. 8 would be like Gandhi level. So we may not all go through 8, but values level 3 would be like the rebel. And a lot of times, like from a developmental perspective, we'll go through that. Like obviously age 2, we have toddler stage, but really teenage years, we also have a rebellious period. For myself, I never really went through the classic teenage rebel years, as we'll probably unpack a little bit within my story, but I was very sick with chronic eating disorders, anorexia, so I wasn't like out partying with friends as a teenager. So I think I got some of my rebel out like in my entrepreneurial path as well.
So does everybody go or try, I guess, strive to go through those 8 stages? Is it similar to like Maslow's hierarchy? Like how does that play out?
A bit. We will transcend. So after values level 3, we go to values level 4. Some people just stay kind of stuck there, which would be systems thinking. 70% of the population is living in a values level 4 state where it's just, we do what we're told by the book, or like, you know, white lab coat is right, like in the medical field, or I go to college, I get a good job, I do the American dream thing. That would be values level 4. Values level 5 is the entrepreneur. So that's where we begin to transcend as entrepreneurs, thinking like, maybe how could I earn my own money or like do my own thing. Values level 6 is about more so like community, doing things for humanity. And like as we get up in 7 and 8, it starts to become less about self and more about like others and everything like that. But
I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's an NLP concept, neuro-linguistic programming concept.
So I would argue you were what, probably in the 5-6 realm of some form? Maybe
exactly.
a 7? I don't know.
No, 5-6. I would say like a vast majority of our peers here in Austin are like in the entrepreneur space. Like, yeah.
There's a ton of people here that are definitely carving their own path, but also like wanting to give back to community in a lot of ways.
100%. Yeah.
That's cool. I've never heard of such a thing. Cool. So let's follow that journey a little bit. So you are also an OT, which I love and admire. It's so rare that I meet. I know, for real.
Occupational therapist.
Thank you. There's so few of us, I feel like. So whenever you run into one, you're like, oh my gosh.
I know. I feel like it's, unfortunately, it feels like a dying profession. And like, I want to bring new life to it because I feel like there's so much we can do within really helping people live life to the fullest and meaningful lives is what the premise is. Of OT. And I think traditionally a lot of people think about OT as being, you know, in a rehab hospital or working with like kids that have autism and et cetera. Whereas we can transcend that, or I've kind of been doing that in my business.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the profession so confusing and why so many people don't even know what an occupational therapist is because I had a professor tell me that it's kind of a inch deep and a mile wide.
Yeah.
Like you can go so many directions with it, from literally like the tech industry to mental health to physical health and everything in between.
Yeah, it's good for the individual that gets bored easily.
Right, totally. Yeah. So I would be curious then as to like, let's fill in the gaps a little bit for people. So like you had the serial entrepreneurship when you were more a young child, and eventually you reached a point where you have a doctorate in occupational therapy. What's the interim there? What's the in-between?
Well, I think after my serial entrepreneurship as a young kid, like lemonade stands, starting my babysitter's club, there was a distinct moment. Like I remember at age 10 years old when I found myself in a hospital and I was being plated not 1, but 4 Pop-Tarts on my tray. And Nurse Bertha comes in and says, eat it. And the kitchen had messed up that day. I actually was only supposed to have 1 Pop-Tart on my tray. But I had to sit there and then in the next 15 minutes eat 4 Pop-Tarts. And I hadn't had a Pop-Tart since I was like, I don't know, probably 8. I was only 10 right now. But something inside me like flipped a switch of like, this is not right. And I just remember feeling like a prisoner in my own skin. I was in the hospital at that time for an early journey of anorexia that had begun earlier that year. And so was being refed and nourished in a hospital where I was being told like, this is good for me, this is healthy for me, this is what I have to do. After 15 minutes passed, my little tummy was gurgling, and remember just like completely soiling myself, and like my stomach couldn't handle all that sugar and processed food, etc. And then the nurse running in and just saying, oh my gosh, you are going to be in so much trouble. And basically showering me, then giving me a boost shake, like an Ensure to drink to make up for the lost calories. But like really that moment is something inside me flipped a switch, and it was just like, I'm going to figure out like how to do things and to help people eventually one day, which is really what I built my business on, and to do things in a different way. And so that's where a lot of, I think, skepticism around just conventional thinking began, and not in all spheres, whether it's healthcare for sure, as well as in business, as well as in just like the way of like the education system, etc. There's just so many systems in our society, and being told what to do. And a lot of us just tend to follow suit. And so that's where the entrepreneurship side of me began. And then I think fast forward to, age 23, which is where I was in grad school at the time. Really, my journey of my eating disorder had been continuing for that long as well. And I was actually going to be the next Katie Couric on the Today Show was my goal. I love broadcast, I love journalism, and I love telling stories, writing, etc. So that was really my path. However, my health journey really took me down another. And so I found myself at age 23, like 13 years later after all that had happened, again in a hospital, really on death's doorstep. And I was 79 pounds, and it really, everything had flashed back into my life, or my head, of being that 10-year-old girl. Only this time I was obviously 23. Before making it into that hospital, though, I'll never forget waking up one morning and just like seeing that number, and then praying like, God, help me make a change today, and driving to the gym. And I was yelling that out loud, God, help me make a change today. And what I thought that meant was, help me eat a tablespoon of almond butter more, or work out 30 minutes less on my Stairmaster. And when I got to the gym at the YMCA in Nashville, not one, but 9 other individuals walked up. And these were 9 other gym goers who didn't know me from really Adam. And they just stepped in and spoke up and said they wanted to help. And they had seen me slaving away on a Stairmaster every single day that whole past year and just withering away. I was working out upwards of 6 to 8 hours a day at that time. And my eating disorder had become such a part of my like achievement and control, and just amidst stress of school, etc. And they said I really didn't have an option, that they were going to help me. So they drove me to Vanderbilt Hospital, where I can't come in and no bullet wound has happened or car injury or whatever. But within 48 hours, I found myself in the CCU with a heart rate in the near 20s, and doctors saying I may not make it. And that is when something in me really flipped and just said, I am going to help people come out on the other side of this. And this meant wherever they're stuck in their life. I had been stuck for so long. And so I didn't know exactly what that looked like, from a business perspective or anything like that. But I did know all of my mess was going to be like something beautiful, and be used for good. And so that's where like mission began to form, to really want to help people to heal. So my business was really founded from my own health journeys, and also like questioning conventional thinking, and really wanting to do something different and make the world a better place.
People have heard me say this on the show a number of times, but I think it just rings so true with so many people that I talk to, of we are always best positioned to serve the person we once were.
Definitely.
And that's totally what happened with that story. And for the record, thanks for sharing that. It definitely, it's not just cold in here. I for sure got goosebumps.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's pretty incredible that you were able to have people around you in your life that were able to support you in that moment. I guess for anybody else, just to maybe understand, and we don't have to go too deep into this rabbit hole, but I'd be curious as to what did you maybe learn from that experience of an eating disorder, and what could maybe others learn from it to maybe, I don't know, prevent it or to get out of something like that if they were in that situation? Or what did you really learn from that?
Yeah.
What's the message?
I mean, I think ultimately eating disorders are not about the food. It's not about body. Really, my eating disorder was a gut hunger. I call them gut hungers that I had inside, of a need for worth, or a need for, obviously control is how I also met that. A need for wanting connection in my life. So my eating disorder personally started when a little girl, 10 years old, said basically I was fat. She was 69 pounds, I was 80 pounds, and made a comment basically of how fat she was and asked me what I weighed. And so it was in that moment at that fourth grade recess that like the seeds of not being good enough, and some of those seeds had been planted earlier, but I would say like eating disorders are really not about food and body. It's about hungers that we have in our lives. And so whether it's a hunger for control, a hunger for worth, a hunger for connection and love, a hunger for purpose, a hunger for joy, like there's multiple hungers that like would feed our souls, and we try to just, it oftentimes can manifest in food and through food as being the metaphor. So I think if you have a funky relationship with food or with your body, if you're thinking about food more often than you used to, for example, or if you're finding yourself like, you know, eating beyond like satisfaction, to just get really curious and ask like, what am I really hungry for? And that would be, I guess, the self-reflection.
Yeah, I've competed in a couple of physique shows, and it's interesting, like the mental behaviors that teaches you. Of like, even now to this day, I can still admit that I don't necessarily eat so much of like satiations. Like I don't really follow those in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I just eat because like I feel like you're supposed to, and I need the calories, and I want to compete, and I'm very
Fuel.
athletic. Right.
Yeah.
Which I would argue probably isn't the healthiest mentality behind it, but
Yeah, I think it just depends. Like, you know, I think we all have to do a gut check for ourselves too. Is like, you know, is this healthy or not healthy mindset for me, and how I'm thinking about food and approaching it.
right.
Yeah.
Interesting. That I just wanted to tap on that real quick because
Yeah.
obviously you've had a lot of experience with it, and you look great now for the
Thanks.
record. So
Thank you.
you've come a long ways.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's follow that journey a little bit then. So you realized that you had a new path in life. You weren't going to be a journalist or the next star on a television per se.
Yes.
You are a star on a podcast.
Exactly.
For the record.
At least in the way that I scripted it. Yeah.
So knowing now that you had a new journey in life and you wanted to get more into the health space and like essentially serve the person you once were, where did you go next? How did that look?
Yeah, so I ended up spending a year in treatment again after many years, and so had some time to think of what I wanted to do next step-wise. Decided to go back, finish my doctorate degree, because I really ended up in school for that doctorate as a ticket out of Arkansas. I was like living at home with my parents after college, working in the newsroom, but they wanted me to live at home because I was so sick. So I went back to school, finished that out. And then it was like when I launched to the world, that's really where beginning to put my business together began. And it started in a CrossFit gym, like coaching people, like both in fitness as well as just like actually health coaching, life coaching kind of work that I began doing. I started a website, and I learned quickly, build it and they will not come necessarily.
Correct.
I was like, I put so much energy into that. And then I was like, oh yeah, there's like a whole marketing piece to this. But it really just started life on life, like really impacting one life at a time and really working with people where they were at and their health goals and health, really coaching kind of perspective is how I started. And then began to kind of, I mentioned like I had part-time jobs, PRN jobs, like so with my OT degree, I was working part-time in the hospitals and the pediatric clinics, etc., just so I could like eat and like earn some money as I'm building something on the side, and people just getting to like, know, and trust me more. I've been in Austin 17 years, and so it was like building even just like awareness of who I was in town. And I mean, there was a whole nother chapter after the eating disorder too of a health journey that became my like fast track to medical school. Like I was actually going to go back to medical school, and I ended up getting sick with like Lyme disease, mold illness, 5 autoimmune diseases, hypothyroidism, all sorts of just like gut issues and hormone imbalances, and something I call post-recovery, what happens to your body after just years of chronic dieting, disordered eating, not taking care of yourself. And so my gut terrain had been wrecked. And so from age 23 to 33, I began to like just battle these things as I'm also building a business. And it became such amazing inspiration for what I'm doing ultimately now, which is functional medicine, nutrition, therapy work, just at a deeper level than just coaching that I was initially doing with an OT degree. And so my own journey again became my best teacher in what I am now doing today.
Yeah, because you could resonate with people, right?
100%.
You were living it day in and day out. What do you contribute those issues coming from? You said like it was just a pile up of the things you'd done in the past over the years, or like how did you get to that point?
If I had been sick with my eating disorder for about 15 years, like your gut microbiome gets wrecked from not eating to like eating 4 Pop-Tarts in one setting, or like Egg McMuffin Friday mornings and treatment and triple bagel days, etc. Like there was just some crazy stories from my eating disorder treatment experiences, which Pop-Tarts, pizza, and Prozac is the typical treatment for eating disorders. So I lived in these two opposing worlds, whether it was like really strict restriction or like the complete opposite standard American diet. At like, if you've ever seen the movie Heavyweights, I was like living that in treatment. And so my gut microbiome was not really seated well. The gut is connected to everything. And so like from an immune perspective, a hormone perspective, a brain perspective, a detox perspective, like my body, the systems were just not working. They were depleted. So that's where these issues began to crop up in that latter 10 years after I was out of all of the eating disorder stuff.
Based on everything you know about gut health, I'm going to throw a question at you that I don't feel like I've ever asked on a podcast show, but like what would be maybe the best and or the worst foods maybe somebody could be eating for their health?
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Or gut health specifically.
Ultimately, like the ultra-processed foods, 70% of people that's the majority of food that Americans are eating.
Right.
But even in, I think about like drying foods, like bars and like chips, etc. Like even the paleo, keto versions of those things, like if you don't have a base diet of like real foods that protein, fat, and fiber at your meals, just balance, that are coming from the perimeter of the grocery store or like what you would find at your farmer's market, like that just being the real nourishing foods for your body. So if your diet is primarily I'm eating like 3 protein bars in a day and like running on a pot of coffee every day, then your gut microbiome is just not being seated well, or set up for as much success as possible.
I feel like you're talking about me with the coffee.
I know you're turning over a new leaf.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So I want to circle back to you kind of starting the business and like scratching your own itch essentially of dealing with all these health issues yourself. Do you happen to remember your first client or clients, or was there one that had like a big impact on you when you were first starting your business?
Yeah. I mean, I think we attract who we were, or tend to work with maybe who we were 5 years ago, that kind of client. So I think early on, my clients were those that had struggled with disordered eating and body image and just like lack of food freedom. And so there were some just like really like maybe college age girls that come to mind to me right now of like that really trusted me to like guide them and lead them into a different way of thinking. A lot of the work that I was doing at that stage was more thought work. Now, as like with my functional medicine and nutrition, I'm also doing a lot more physical type of health work as well with people. One of my favorite clients, she 40 pounds when I started working with her, and she was, I think, probably like 19. And so she was living in Singapore and had found my story online. Like CBS had done a story on my Angel's intervention. So like national news, she found it on like YouTube or something like that, reached out, and she was living at home with her family, and her family was doing family like refeeding therapy. Like she wasn't in hospitals anymore. Doctors had given up on her, and she trusted me. And so I started coaching her, working with her twice a week, where we would do just check-in calls, and our time differences were so like vast. I think she'd be talking to me at like 11 p.m. at night, and I was talking at like really early in the morning with her. But fast forward, and like she's completely healed, and it's so cool. She actually recently reached out to me. She saw a job post on LinkedIn that I had posted for an assistant in my virtual clinic, and she reached out to apply, and so connected.
Dope.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love the power of content from that standpoint.
Exactly.
I think people love to hate on like social media or content in general, but at the end of the day, it's just connected so many people to other people, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So I know you have done a TED Talk recently. Congrats.
Thanks.
That's amazing. You have a book.
Yeah.
You have a ton of content. I've seen like your tons of guides and ebooks and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Of all of these things that you've done, and a podcast show, of all these things that you've done, is there one that stands out to you that maybe has had the biggest impact or been the most helpful for you?
I love writing, so I will always be a starving artist, if anything. I think I have 14 books on my computer still that I have not published.
Wait, that you've written?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
okay.
much content sitting on. But my Total Gut Reset book that I am about to launch this spring has probably been the most impactful because it's really a summation of my journey and the beginning, and then there are tactics in it, but it really is health is an inside job and about healing from the inside, like by my own experience, sharing that. And it's a book I birthed, I think like right before the pandemic. I was actually going to release it in 2020. Decided not to in March 2020 of all time. So obviously other things happened and I decided not to release it then. And I'm so thankful I didn't because I've even healed more and just like learned more. But yeah, it's definitely the baby that's been cooking really for 35 years of my life. So yeah.
And you have a profound story, so I'm sure it just like came out like nothing.
Yeah, definitely. It's been through 18 iterations, so like edits and everything like that. So it's just been refined. Yeah.
I'm kind of on that verge of like, I love the value of a book in general. And I also, I'm definitely an introvert, so I enjoy the time to sit down and just write as well. But I don't know. I feel like my story is more about like went to college and partied and drank beer and now somehow I'm an entrepreneur. So it's like,
there's a story in there. I know we could pull it out.
But yeah, you have such a fascinating story. I'm sure it's resonated with a lot of people. So that's super cool. What's maybe the most expensive mistake you've ever made? And that could be emotionally or monetarily in relation to your business.
A lot of expensive mistakes. A lot. I always say I'm going to write a book on what not to do in business because I think I like
you hit them all.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was one year. I mean, I think just financially, just like I've like early on, it was a build it and they'll come philosophy with anything. So it's like if I see a vision, I'm going to create it. I'm a creator that's my superpower, and it's my like Achilles heel too, because sometimes I'll focus so much on creation. Don't market it, obviously, with like 14 books on my computer right now.
Totally.
But yeah, like $60,000 spent on like designs and website stuff in a year. And that was just like silly money that I like should not have spent on all these Upwork designers and random website people. And I think putting a lot more merit into a website than needs to be. Like I love nowadays where there are like so many simple options for people to design or create a website, but like really my philosophy has become like, how can I make things as simple as possible, both in business and then also for the product or the service I provide for clients as well.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with that creator aspect. It's funny though, because my entire life would have never in a million years called myself quote unquote creative. I've always felt myself as a very logical thinker, but like over the last maybe 2 or 3 years of just like creating a lot of content and doing a podcast show and writing and all those things, there is like an identity shift that for sure happened. And it's weird because it does become kind of addicting in a lot of ways. Like to the point where you're right, it is a distraction, right?
Yeah.
Like you create so much without the actual like marketing or selling side of it.
And like less is more like that. I'm really excited as I'm starting a new venture in my business and kind of like taking all that I've learned from the past to then create a new product moving forward and a brand company called the Total Gut Reset. But really to be able to focus more on like something solo, which would be like biohacking your health through your gut. And there's many things that you, beyond just digestive issues, one will experience or may have, but the focus is still going to be how the gut helps leverage that versus when I look back at everything I've created, I have so many passions and so many things and so much experience, whether I'm talking mold or Lyme or gut or hormones or metabolism or detox, like it goes on and on. But I think that can be also confusing or overwhelming if I just like launch 10 products or 10 ebooks on different things, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. Yeah. There's such an importance to being able to focus, right? And to have like intentions around, like I was just talking to a client the other day about, I do a lot of website design development and marketing as well. And I was telling him the other day, I was like, the three questions we always have to answer is, what do you do? What problem do you solve? And what action do you want people to take next? And if you can't very quickly wrap that off of like what those are, we have a problem. Because if you can't do it, how in the world is somebody that's coming to find your content or your business going to figure it out?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So let's follow this journey a little bit then. So you're pushing towards this gut health thing. You're leaning really hard into creating content around that, into the golden poop, as one might say. So where do you see things going now with your business, and like what's kind of the future ahead?
Yeah, I think definitely scaling up outside of myself and becoming an owner versus an operator in my business has been really what the beat I'm marching to now. I've been an operator for 10 years and I'm ready to like step into more of a leadership role over what I'm doing and like help find the who's, not the hows in my business as well, that are going to help drive the vision forward, and hire slow, fire fast, like just really methodically building a team. Number one, because there is strength in numbers. And I think to scale to a model that may compete, really disrupting the diet industry is a mission for me. So if I want to compete with a company such as like, say, Weight Watchers of the baby boomer generation, or a Whole30, or even like a CrossFit business model, meaning from a community perspective, like if I want to get at that scale, I can't just keep doing what I'm doing and wearing all the hats in my business. So I think that's a big part of building for sure.
What did you say? Hire slow, fire fast? What did you say?
Hire slow, fire fast, like hiring methodically versus like in the past when I've brought on contractors or team members, it's usually like, oh, you're a web designer. Great. You can do this. Like versus vetting them a bit more. Or like if it is someone that is a more right wing woman or man for me, like a COO or a CMO.
How do you vet for some of that stuff? I had, what's her name? Kaylin Piles, KP, on the show recently, and she talked a lot about, she uses actually an anagram.
Oh, interesting.
Is how she does a lot of her hiring. But I'd be curious, how do you vet for people?
A couple of things. Like I've really gotten into human design, number one. So understanding one's human design is really helpful, I think, for understanding like what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are their strategies. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you might have ran mine, sort of. I think
yes, we talked about this.
Was it a Manny Gen or something?
Oh, I love Manny Gens. Yes. Okay. Superpowers. But like even beyond that, like that's the top layer. But the human design will show how one operates. Like, so for example, one of my human design qualities is in life, I go through birth, deaths, and resurrections, meaning like I have to learn through experience. And then after like the resurrection of like my two health journeys, for example, are a great example of that. Or like what I've learned in business, like the hard way, I have to go through the hard things in order for me to then create something new and better. And that's just like how my wiring is, and like how the universe just sets up my path for me. And one of my best strategies is to respond in life versus like initiating and making things just happen. I've always been frustrated whenever I'm trying to force things to happen and they're not happening, but it's not in my design. Whereas if I would like respond, when I let things come to me and then decide to move forward with it or not, and opportunities, things work out a lot easier in my design. And so knowing that about myself, knowing that about the team members I bring on, where I'm also like, where am I lacking? Where is one more strong in those qualities? So that's one way of, I think, vetting people. Another would be just like more so before signing like contracts, or like just doing kind of a trial period with people, whatever the capacity of that job role is. So if it is an assistant, or if it is like even a one-off project or a mini project, if it's like a designer or something like that. So kind of just having like a tryout.
No, I totally, I agree with both of those in a lot of ways. And I can definitely say that I'm one of those people that also trial by fire seems to be the only way that I could learn anything.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Yeah. It totally just recently happened when I was out in Cozumel, Mexico with some buddies for a bachelor party. And we did some scuba diving. And I'd never done it before. And everyone and their mom was like, are you certified? I'm like, no, I'm not certified. I've never done this in my life. Didn't even know that was a thing.
That's awesome.
And it was awesome, but at the same time, there was a degree of like anxiety that came from doing something like that.
Yeah.
Where like you're because if you go up too quickly when you're deep enough, you get the bends, right?
Exactly.
And so yeah, there's anxiety when you're at the bottom of an ocean thinking like, man, I really need to get to the surface, but I can't because I'll die. And it's like, yeah, there's just a lot going through your head at those moments. But
you survived. I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm here.
Talking
So
yeah, exactly.
But it is a trial by fire thing, and I've always learned best that way for whatever reason. I admire the people that can do it the other way of feedback and
exactly.
Yeah.
Just learning that way.
What do you feel like differentiates you from people out there like in the other gut health worlds then, I guess one could say?
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately just my really vast experience of personal experiences that have like really allowed me to feel what my clients go through or like the end user is going through versus just like learning something with my head, knowing that gut health is important or something like that scientifically. I think too, my like edge of really food freedom is different and anecdotal to a lot of diet culture out there, both health and diet culture, healthy eating culture, we may call it now. I feel like that word diet is a bit archaic, but you think about any diet under the sun right now, carnivore, keto, vegan, like whatever macro you're going to be cutting out, like those all maybe have a therapeutic time and place. And like I have a big food freedom perspective just with my own eating disorder history, that it's like when given the right tools, your body innately wants to heal itself, and no one ever did a study showing balance to be a bad thing. And so I think I talk more in like that kind of languaging. I'm really big on the words I use, and like not scarcity mindset either, like an abundance mindset with food, and just like also with lifestyle factors. It's really stress is the number one, I think, factor that's like causing all of our health issues in our society, not just overt gut issues. And so I do too have that edge where I'm also like not just looking at one physically, but also I understand like the mental and emotional pieces of one and their healing. I think just with my background in NLP type of work and German New Medicine, which is another framework that I've been using a lot more to understand like the root causes of illness, that I would say most functional medicine practitioners out there are just, it's kind of becoming green allopathy, a lot of functional medicine rather, where it's like, okay, we're not doing RX prescriptions, but we're trading like supplements and lab tests for pills and workups, and maybe patients get better, but maybe some don't. And so I think I take a very genuinely holistic perspective.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. Buddha said it, the middle way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
I think about it in every area of life. Yeah, it's actually profound. When you said the word stress, I just want to bring this up because like I feel like people listening to the show could benefit from something like this. I had a mentor once tell me, and it's a trigger for me now in my brain whenever I hear the word stress. He goes, just relax your butthole.
Oh, that's so funny.
And so like anyone listening,
it makes you think.
Yeah, it's like, oh wait, why am I clenching right now?
Yeah,
like, it's because you're holding on to a little stress.
Yeah,
so just relax that, and
that's
then you're
so funny.
And then it just like
what
relaxes
a
everything.
Cool mentor here.
So anyone listening to the show, when you hear the word stress, just relax your butthole. You're probably clenching for a moment.
That's hilarious.
I have a round of rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Best business advice.
I mean, trust your gut is ultimately what just came up to me versus your head. I talk about tune in, take care, trust your gut. Yeah. I think like when we get caught up in comparing ourselves to other people or doing what we shoulds or like, checklist versus just like tuning into like what is our bigger vision and then trusting in the next best step to get there. I think that takes a lot of stress out of it, and that it's a marathon, not a sprint too.
Yeah, I like the trust your gut thing. It was Naval, I can't pronounce his last name, it starts with an R, but he said it takes a long time to develop your gut, but once you do, don't listen to anything else.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise out there otherwise.
Best marketing advice.
I think just ultimately being authentic. There's so much like talk about vulnerability out there nowadays, but I have found just like even in my own like Instagram post, etc., it's like the content that I'm actually, when I'm the one writing the post and it's just a very authentic post, it sticks and lands so much better than like a very factual post or something that maybe my team puts together based on content I've created. Even if they're taking from my other content, it's like still me being the hands and the touch there. So I think the more authentic we can be in our marketing and just genuinely like falling in love with your customers versus the product or that you're selling or like the sale itself, that is going to be so much more attractive.
I would say also too it's a lot more fun that way. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more joy that I feel like comes from that.
Yeah.
I've found anyways. What's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
Autonomy and no ceiling. Yeah.
No ceiling.
Yeah.
When are you the most productive?
I mean, I'm productive all the time. But
whoa, okay.
I think when I move, like my friends joke with me, I have a retirement type of schedule because I move a lot in the day. And so like I have fixed points like in the morning, middays, and evenings for like both movement and then also connection with people. And I'm actually working less in my business than I ever have and actually more productive because of that. So I think like, you know, those deep work times of pockets of like 3 to 4 hours and then taking a break is really helpful for me to be productive and keeps me going.
I have the same schedule, I would say. Retirement schedule, though. I've not heard it called that. Who is your inspiration?
Tony Robbins.
Yeah, you were just recently at an event. Give us what's like the biggest thing you learned from that event you were recently at?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one I went to recently was Business Mastery, and it was the walking away with being, I'm an owner now, not an operator. But he talks a lot about incantations in general, which is like what we repeat, the stories we tell ourselves on a daily basis. And so walking away with new stories to tell myself. Yeah.
One of my favorite things that people say when I'm having a conversation with them, and I know they're on my wavelength, is when they go, the stories I tell myself. Like anything that's about to follow that sentence, I'm always like, oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Like this will be good.
Unpack.
Who is your, tell me one secret about you. Or something most people just don't know about you.
That's so challenging. What don't people know about me?
It doesn't have to be. I had Angela on the show at one point, and she said she sleeps with a nightlight. Like, so it doesn't, you know what I mean? It could be anything.
I mean, I don't sleep much at all. Like, as a health practitioner, I sleep maybe 5 or 6 hours a night, and I have so much energy.
You sleep 5 to 6 hours a night?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't require much sleep.
Damn. Okay,
Yeah.
so when I ask, okay, that ties into productivity, I feel like. Because you're like, you have an extra like 3 hours over everybody else.
Perhaps. And I don't drink coffee. I've never actually had a cup of coffee in my life, ever.
Okay, those are massive. Okay, anyways, we don't even have to go into that. That's wild to me. What would you change about yourself?
I would change. I love myself now. I don't know. Like, it's like, I tend to sometimes overthink things. So I think just the ability to not overthink.
What's your favorite app or resource that you're using right now?
I love notes on my phone. The good old notes app is just like on your iPhone. But I keep I do a daily breath prayers journal on there where it's just like releasing the worries, stresses, or prayers on my heart and head. And I've been doing that for like 4 years. And it's just so cool to look back on it and just see like the answered prayers along the way.
Well, when were you the happiest?
I'm pretty happy now. I love just whenever I'm in Austin, Texas, I'm happy.
So, yeah, okay. You nailed it. You're here. So,
yeah.
What's your favorite part about Austin? And you can't say the people.
Is that what everyone
Everyone
says?
says that.
I'm going to say the people.
Yeah, we know. We've determined that as the answer, but we're not going to let people use it.
I mean, I love how Austin is one of those cities where you just come as you are. And so, yeah, be who you are.
So I have one last question for you, but before I ask that question, I just want to acknowledge you for following your own path and continuing to do your own thing and to have always been an entrepreneur for some crazy wild reason and to now be in a place where you are serving other people that were once yourself and to be doing that at a super high level with hiring a team and creating your own podcast show and doing TED Talks. And I just think it's awesome. I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shout out to you too.
Before I ask my last question, what's your plug? Where can people find you?
Oh, drlauren.com. It's Dr. Lauren with a Y though, not an E. And then that's my handle as well, just at Dr. Lauryn on Instagram primarily.
Cool. Last question. It's really, what's your best piece of advice to other entrepreneurs out there? And so like, if you were to start over from ground zero of what you're doing now with your business and your practice and everything, and you were to give rather yourself a piece of advice or somebody else in that situation, what would you maybe tell them?
Yeah. I mean, I think keeping your like why in mind, like as your driving factor, like just understanding, you know, the purpose or the mission of why you're doing what you're doing, and will help you focus on people like your customer versus the product or just like, I'm not making as much money as I want, etc. Like I think you focus on creating a very, what it is you always wanted kind of thing, like, or that why, all the money will find you kind of thing. So like we were talking before the show, like my prayer in my business has always been, God, you bring the manna. And I'm working less than I ever have in my business, and yet have been more fruitful in my business because of just like really focusing on delivering like a solid product, basically, in quotes, because it's been a service right now. But really focus, like my mission has been my primary driver.
Love that. Appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Hey friend, thanks for listening to the show. And if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again, and keep hustling, my friends.